Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston Station is ready.
Denby High School and Aviation Academy, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Dr. Aaron Smith with Denby High School and Aviation Academy. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear, Denby High School.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, happy to be here. Welcome aboard the International Space Station.
Thank you. I've got some students who want to ask you some questions, and we'll go ahead and get started. Yes, I would like to ask, how has the time you spent in space affected your perspective towards the Earth?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I tell you, every time we look out the window, we see something even more amazing and more beautiful than I could ever imagine. One of the things I wish I did was study more geography and geology, of course, but I think when you look at the Earth from this perspective, you realize what a precious resource it is and that we really need to take care of it.
What are your plans for involvement? What are your plans on involvement on future projects?
Well, as you know, the Space Shuttle program just ended, and now NASA is in the process of building a new vehicle called Orion, and that vehicle will go on to asteroids or Moon or Mars, or it's yet to determine places, but it's going to go beyond low Earth orbit. So after this mission, I'll go and work on that project and hopefully be able to contribute there.
Why are you willing to risk your life to go into space?
Yeah, flying on rockets and living in space and doing spacewalks, it's all very risky business. But here at NASA, we minimize the risks quite a bit. You know, I think the way I think of things is it's okay to accept a certain amount of risk if we do everything we can to mitigate those risks, to lessen the risk. It's like when you guys ride your bicycles, if you ride a motorbike or a skateboard or something, it's risky. But if you wear a helmet, you reduce the risk of injury. So same thing with what we do. Even though what we do is very risky, we take a lot of precautions and we make sure it's as safe as it can be.
Are there any particular emergencies you are always preparing for?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. A lot of our training is practicing for emergencies and preparing for those emergencies in case they happen. Here on board Space Station, some of the bigger emergencies that we're always prepared for and that we train for constantly are fire, depressurization, or a toxic spill, some kind of poison in the air, if you will. And we train on the ground quite a bit as a crew, and then we even do some training up here.
How much effort does it take to do tasks on the International Space Station compared to on Earth?
Well, hey, that's a good question. You know, here on board Space Station, there is no up or down, so things can be done in any different kind of attitude. I'll let Mike help explain.
Yeah, you know, sometimes the microgravity environment can make things a little harder. So if I don't have myself secured and I'm trying to turn this knob, all I end up doing is turning. On the other hand, as Rick just said, there is no up or down, and so you can put yourself in an orientation that's best for the job at hand. So if I was working on something down here and it was better to be in this orientation, I could do it, whereas if Rick was working on something above his head, maybe that's a better orientation for him.
What is your favorite part about space and what got you interested in going?
Oh, boy, there's, you know, probably the most enjoyable thing up here is looking out the window, looking back at the Earth. Of course, being able to float and move heavy objects around is also pretty neat.
How many backflips have you done in space, and are there any tricks that you like to do?
Yeah, so I've done a few backflips. I haven't really counted them, so I'm not quite sure. And then, you know, other tricks, it's kind of neat because you're floating all the time. So just going from one module to another, you end up trying it in a different way, a different orientation. You see if you can get through a whole module without touching anything. So there's all kinds of little things that you just do every day just in the normal work around here.
Will people ever be sent to Mars?
Oh, I think yes, absolutely. We will go to Mars someday. It's not a question of if we will go to Mars. I think the real question is when we will go to Mars. When will we go to Mars? And, you know, it may take 10, 20, 30 years, but eventually we will go there. The economy has to be right. The timing has to be right. The motivation has to be right. But we will get to Mars eventually.
I was wondering, is it easier to tell which constellation of stars is which in space?
Yeah, you know, the stars, we don't see quite as much up here because most of our windows actually are looking down at the Earth. And so from a constellation standpoint, we don't see them quite as often as you might down on Earth. So, you know, on the other hand, they're going to appear pretty much the same. If they're viewable to us, they would appear pretty much the same as you might see on Earth.
How long does it take to become an astronaut, and what are the qualifications?
Yeah, well, everybody's different. You know, we have astronauts from all different backgrounds. We have scientists, we have doctors, we have engineers, we have pilots, we have school teachers. We have astronauts from many, many different areas. In my particular case, I applied to become an astronaut for the first time, and then by the time I did get selected, it took 9 years of applications to get selected in 3 interviews. That's probably a little bit on the long side, but some folks apply and it only takes a couple of years from the time they apply to the time it gets selected. And of course, you really can't apply until you have a college degree and even an advanced degree and some work experience. So most of the folks that get selected are probably in their mid-30s to mid-40s.
And how do you record data from experiments?
I'm sorry, we didn't understand that one. Can you repeat that question?
What is your daily routine and how you record data from experiments?
Okay, that's a great question. Daily routine. Well, we do a lot of things just like you guys. When we wake up in the morning, of course, we're going to brush our teeth, shave, do that kind of stuff, clean up. I tend to work out first thing in the morning. Then we have breakfast, and then we get into our work day. And our work day starts with a morning meeting that we have with all of the ground centers around the world. We kind of just touch base with them if there's any big questions for the day's activities, and then we get right into it. And during the day, we might be doing maintenance, we might be doing science, and then there's also exercise that happens during that time period. And so everything, you know, that's one neat thing about up here is no day is the same. And then that work day ends with another conference with all of the ground centers, and then again we have our dinner and then just a little bit of time to relax in the evening. In terms of collecting data from our experiments, there's a wide range of ways that we collect that data. Some of that data comes from us, and so that might be our blood or our urine. Some of that data is transmitted to the ground. Some of it's done through video, just like what you're seeing right now. So there's a wide range of ways that we collect data.
Why do you want to study space and Earth?
I'm sorry, say again?
Why do you want to study space and the Earth?
Why did I want to study space in the Earth? Well, I tell you, when I was in grade school, in 6th, 7th grade, I really started to enjoy science. I really started to enjoy my teacher talking about space. talking about the astronauts, about the space program, things like that. It was just something that really intrigued me. I can't explain why, but it was always very interesting to me. I always thought it was cool to be able to leave the planet in a rocket ship of some kind and to live in space. And that's kind of led me down the path that I've chosen. Of course, I started out being an engineer and then went to work for NASA and eventually became an astronaut. And it's just things that always, everybody has things that somehow you're attracted to those things, and I was just attracted to the space industry.
What is your favorite thing to do in space?
Yeah, for me, that's an easy question. I love to float. There's just something magical about being to come into any module and any orientation that you want, and it's interesting. You forget about up or down up here, and it's quite interesting. You'll come in and you'll just start working on a task, and you'll be working on a rack like this, and the next thing you realize is you're standing on the wall instead of standing on the deck where we are right now. And so that's just an incredible experience, incredible feeling, and that's something I don't think I'll ever get tired of.
What is it like to spacewalk?
Well, a spacewalk is it's the best seat in the house, I always say. The views are incredible. The views of the Earth, like Mike said, we do have windows here on the space station, but they don't give you quite the view of just being out there on a spacewalk with looking at the Earth through your visor. So the views are incredible, but it's also incredible to be out there and be so free, just to think that you're basically your own little spacesuit, your own little spaceship, if you will, out there doing a task to help build the space station or to replace it. It's a lot of pressure to perform. There's a lot of people watching you, but the individual tasks are really not that hard. It's basically turning bolts, installing some kind of box, mating electrical connectors or fluid connectors, but it's always quite exciting.
How do you stay in shape if there's little or no weight?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and that's something that we emphasize quite a bit. In fact, we end up working out probably a couple hours a day, and we have three primary pieces of equipment that we use. One of them is called ARAD. It's the Adaptive Resistive Exercise Device, and that's our weight machine, but it looks quite a bit different than weights you guys might see in the gym down on Earth. We actually pull against a vacuum to get that load to simulate the weights. Then we also have a treadmill. And for the treadmill, it looks very similar to a treadmill you might see, except we have to wear a harness and strap ourselves down to it in order to have that load on our feet and on our bodies as we're running. And then finally, right here to our right, I don't think you can see it, but it's our exercise bike. And again, we lift weights every day, and we're either running on the treadmill or we're using the exercise bike every day.
What recommendations do you have for future astronauts?
Yeah, for future astronauts, my advice, I guess, would be obviously study hard in school. Find a subject that you really enjoy and study it thoroughly. Go get your college degree, get your master's degree, maybe even a PhD degree or an MD if that's something you're interested in. And then apply to NASA or any space agency if you're, if you live over in Europe, or apply to the European Space Agency. But there's space agencies around the world. And once you get a job at, for example, if you get a job at NASA, it may not even be as an astronaut, it may be as a scientist or as an engineer. And those are great jobs and very interesting jobs. And I started my career, I started doing that. And then once you're there at NASA, you could then apply as an astronaut and maybe get selected someday and get a chance to go to the moon or go to Mars or some distant asteroid.
What is the average GPA you need to become an astronaut, and do you need any particular major?
Yeah, that's a hard question because we don't see the GPAs of all the other astronauts or anything like that. I guess maybe if you're on the selection committee you do. So my guess is that the GPAs are pretty high, but I'm sure not everybody has a perfect GPA. And in terms of recommendations, I think Rick's kind of hit on it before. Astronauts come from all walks of life, and the thing to do is find something that you're passionate about. And then that way, if the astronaut doesn't work out, you're doing something you love.
Okay, I'm asking this for one other student who is not here today. What type of experiments do you do?
Hey, we both want to answer that question. We do a lot of different experiments up here. You know, Mike and I, we talk about this a lot, and we kind of categorize it into three different areas. The first category is where we are the subject. We are the experiment. This is where they're drawing blood from us, or they're using ultrasound to measure our eyeballs or measure our spine and take data from us. Second type of experiments are where we have these racks all over the place, as you can see, and these are full of equipment where scientists on the ground are performing experiments, but we are up here as the operators. We're inserting samples into the experiment. We're taking data. We're just basically controlling the experiment for them. And the third type of experiment or category, I'll say, is our experiments up here where we really have very little to do. Maybe we just support the systems that support the experiment. For example, we have systems outside the space station that are measuring and trying to detect dark matter, for example. We have really nothing to do with that, but by us maintaining the space station, providing power and cooling, those experiments can, of course, be performed because they rely on that stuff from the International Space Station. So there's a wide range of experiments, from trying to detect dark matter to trying to come up with new vaccines, to seeing how people adapt to space, to developing new technologies for use on the planet Earth and for use in future spacecraft.
Do you guys lose weight in space?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Do you guys lose weight in space?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have lost weight, and that's one of the things we're very concerned about, because along with weight loss, you could have muscle atrophy and your bones could get weaker, and we certainly don't want that, because when we come back to Earth, that can be or make our recovery that much harder. And so we're constantly trying to get food in our mouths to try and maintain our weight. As of right now, I've lost probably about 7 to 10 pounds, and that's a little much. I need to get that back up.
What is it like on the spacewalk, knowing that a misstep could be dangerous?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's, you know, we just had 2 spacewalks in December, and that was the first for me. Rick has had quite a few prior to that as well, and I will say that the spacewalk was one of the most intense things I've ever done. You know, Rick talked about these incredible views that you're seeing when you're out there because you're not obstructed by windows or anything like that. And that's fantastic. But at the same time, you're constantly thinking about, do I have my tools ready? That means, am I connected to my tools? Are they not going to float off? Am I connected to the space station? And so your mind never stops thinking about those types of things when you're outside the hatch, outside the station. And so it's an amazing experience. It's an amazing, it's a lot of fun, but it's also very intense, and you never want to lose focus while you're out there. At the same time, mistakes happen, and the important thing is when those mistakes happen that you just go on, move on, and keep going, and hopefully have a successful walk.
Gentlemen, we appreciate your time. Our audience, students and staff and guests, if we could give our astronauts a round of applause for their time, please. We appreciate everything
Thank you
you've
for the
done.
great questions. We appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes the event.
Thank you, Denby High School and Aviation Academy. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.